Hey, it's Kyle and Adam from ProjectionHub, and we are here today with another edition of answering the SBA burning questions. So, if you're considering starting a business, expanding one, buying a business, there are all these really unique questions out there you might be thinking or might come across if you're considering getting an SBA loan for a project. And so, today's burning question that I'm going to ask Adam as our resident SBA expert. So, we were former SBA lenders. Adam was a SBA executive director of the loan program for over 12 years, made over 1,500 SBA loans. And so I'm gonna ask him a question today to get his guidance note. And so today's question is what to watch out for when acquiring a seasonal business with an SBA loan. So we could probably take that a lot of different directions how you want to unpack that, but that's today's question.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun seasonal acquisition deals that we've been working on here lately, and they're unique and I think come with a lot of risk if you don't do it right. So in particular, it's really about cash flow and the timing of when you acquire the business. So to give you some examples, let's say you've got a retail business that, does almost all your profit in November and December, right? If you acquire that business in January and you don't have enough working capital to cover probably losses all throughout like the year, and then like you might have operating losses, and then you also have to outlay the cash to buy the inventory to prepare for the Christmas season or holiday season, it, then you're going to run out of cash like right away. So uh, one of the things that we often are seeing is like there might be the idea that you're going to acquire the business before this like next busy season. Like we have worked on a client with a UPS store, and they have some seasonality to that business, and the idea was to acquire it in August, but then that drags on to September and then October, and then there's an SBA shutdown. And like next thing you know, like they've missed they've missed a lot of the busy season, and they made the offer to the seller with the assumption that like they were gonna get in and then have this nice profitable busy season. So I don't know in this particular situation if they're going back to try to renegotiate, but they're if the seller's getting to keep all the profits from the busy season, now they're going to have to wait a whole nother year after they acquire it to experience that busy season, which is a big issue for them, I think.
I've got a couple of thoughts there. One, it's interesting because I can understand if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a person buying a seasonal business, like they know where the money making moments are. So it feels like we got to get this done before the next one hits, right? Because it's like we got to get the payday, like that's the value, is that moment where all the income comes in. But you also have to think about the fact that maybe it's better to do it, is it better to do that after that happens, right? Where like, because if you get in there right before maybe the payday, maybe that means you're, like you said, you also need to be prepared to front the costs in order to get to that point, right? So like maybe, and that's probably going to change for all kinds of seasonal businesses. Like I know one you've worked on recently was like a campground, right? Like a seasonal campground, but not like a state park type deal where it's like daily campers, right? So people maybe would like lock in a spot for a whole season, but they're probably paying at one or a couple of moments throughout the year. So timing that acquisition maybe of, do all those people pay, on the same day or the same month, or is like everyone timed out differently through the year based on when they started theirs? And I'm sure that like that business is going to have its own unique moments where it makes the most sense to plan that closing date for and giving yourself enough time. And if it's going to be too tight, like does it make most sense to be engaged under an LOI but push it out for the next season and like identify that moment that's going to be ideal, like maybe least amount of pressure cost wise, but also like you're not getting the payday in 3 weeks, right? There's going to be some sort of balance there in the pain versus the gain, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing you really need to try to figure out if it is very seasonal, you need to try to figure out what the seller on the front end, like an agreement that changes that isn't like a fixed price. I think it needs to have something that can change if you like, oh, we didn't get the deal done until later. Well, and now you got this whole extra year of profit, and now I have to front load all this extra working capital, you know, um, the price should be different, or they need to leave. The seller needs to leave some working capital in the account for you. An example we worked on was a wedding venue, which is extra complicated because it's seasonal, but also people are paying deposits in advance. So, like a long time in advance. So, if you buy this wedding venue business, does the seller get to keep all of the deposits for next year's wedding venues that you haven't actually earned that revenue yet? You haven't actually provided the service yet. Who knows? I mean, maybe the customers may even come and ask for a refund after or like cancel. Like all sorts of things could happen. And so I think, yeah, you need to, if you have a seasonal business or like deposit, that sort of thing, you really need to like get with your attorney probably early on that kind of understands how to structure these things. And good attorneys are going to be used to like putting together the language for this. We can help kind of figure out like what the math looks like what are the right moments, and like also, hey, look here in the model, if you don't do it this way, or if you don't account for some sort of variable, like how much working capital gets left by the seller in the account, we can show you that you're going to run out of money. But I'm not the expert in telling you how to like write the language in a way that holds up, you know.
Right.
But I think about that because otherwise it's going to be a surprise for either you or a surprise for the seller, kind of potentially last minute. You get to the end of it and like, oh man, we just got a big chunk of revenue in cash. Does the seller get that, or does the buyer get to keep that?
There's like a third party involved here too, right? So it's like what sits well with you, what sits well with the seller. So there's a negotiation there of like what they want to get out of it and what you think you're coming into. But then there's also like what does the lender want to see? Like, it may not matter if you and the seller shake hands and you're like both good with that, because if the lender looks at that and like that we're not, whatever, how they want to look at that. So what would their perspective be? I'm assuming it's some sort of cash flow calculation, a debt service coverage calculation, but in like a normal, like a non-volatile business, they have a target. They want that 1.25, and they kind of expect it to be above that probably monthly. So in a business that isn't going to have that, is how does that math or that target change? Are they looking at an annual number? Are they looking at a quarterly number? Like how do you have any sense for, or is it just going to be totally one off? Like, are they going to look at that situation and like, how is that going to, what's going to appease them, I guess? What kind of calculation are they looking for?
Yeah, I do think the lender is going to want to see probably a monthly debt service coverage ratios. A seasonal business, if you just look at annual, you, you're missing some really big risks there. So I do think it makes sense to look at it that way, um, on a monthly basis, and they're gonna probably beat you up on like the underwriting team's gonna beat you up on monthly cash flow to get through the slow season and make sure that you have enough. Uh, so yeah.
And are they just going to want to see that? I mean, both historical cash flow, but also like the projected. Is it just let's say there's 2 months a year where, or 3 months a year, that might be too aggressive, but like there's just this component of the year where cash comes in, but then there's these months where cash, it's clearly not going to be over that probably target debt service coverage ratio. Or do they still need it to be based on the assumption that you've stockpiled cash like in order to still meet that ratio, right? That you're not just assuming in those non-cash flowing months that, or maybe not profitable months, I guess you should say, that you're not just like bleeding all of the cash that you have. Like, is there a healthy amount enough stockpiled to still be able to meet that target?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in some businesses, I mean, they're gonna have to be okay with some months not hitting debt service coverage ratio every single month, but they need to be able to see what it looks like how bad does it get, so that they can show that, okay, yeah, we projected to, and we set ourselves up to have enough working capital on the front end to easily be able to weather that slow season throughout. Yeah. So I think I think lender will want you to use historical monthly data as well, and so you have something to back up those projections, um, based on historical, and then show that, yeah, you're going to have enough to make it through. So
And that math that we just talked about that the lender's going to look at is probably aligns with what's the right moments, right? Like they're going to want to kind of see that, like, okay, well, if you're targeting this month, what does the cash reserve look like? Because that's what you're going to need in order to weather the storm to the next payday. And then how much have you negotiated with the seller? Because you want to make sure that working capital cash backstop is going to probably have enough in it, whether that's being left behind by the seller or you're injecting that probably to be able to like account for that. That's probably where how that math is happening, right?
yeah, yep, I agree.
All right, well there you have it. There's probably more we could talk about for a seasonal business as it relates to, applying for an SBA loan.
So yeah, if you guys are looking at a seasonal business that you're looking to acquire, and want someone to just take a look at the seasonality of it and what that cash flow might look like, I do offer a free SBA review. So we'll put a link in the description of the video below. You can fill out that form. You could even submit, if you had like monthly financials, you could submit the monthly financials. I could take a look at that. Happy to give you some free feedback, and just kind of give you an idea of like, yeah, here's what I'd be concerned about and how much working capital you might need and how I think a lender would look at that. So yeah, if you found this video to be helpful, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna do a lot more content like this, and so would love your feedback. All right, thanks.